Today, we're going to be diving into the idea of, how do we go about kind of the revising and editing using LeaderGuide Pro. Obviously, we talk a lot about building out guidebooks and how you go about that and the processes to do it, which is obviously very important, right? We've got to build our training material, but then we also have to support it and revise it after the fact. So we're going to be looking at that at some areas today, really some techniques to really help that make that whole process easier for you. At any point, if you have any questions, please let me know. But we're going to look at a few items today. I think I've got 5 listed. We're going to kind of look at the text and formatting and how we use it within our guidebooks. This basically allows us to take advantage of all the processes within LeaderGuide Pro to simplify a lot of the editing after the fact. We're going to talk about once you've built a facilitator guide and maybe extracted out a participant guide, how we can sync or send changes from one document back to another. When it comes time, maybe someone in marketing has come out and said, hey, we're no longer using Tahoma or Arial, and we're now this font, or we've updated our color schemes or our icons. How do we go back and update our documents? We're going to look at that. One that I want to kind of at least start getting people thinking about, how do we work as a team in using LeaderGuide Pro, whether it's multiple people developing in a single guidebook, or how do we share what we're doing out for someone to make comments so that we can bring them back in. So we're going to talk about that. And then we'll talk kind of briefly today about when you have to update your PowerPoints. We have done a big session on PowerPoint previously. And then because version 16 of LeaderGuide Pro is just around the corner, there's going to be some slight changes on how that works. So we're going to have a session next month really on working with PowerPoints in LeaderGuide Pro, where we'll go into all the details of it, but we'll talk about high-level concepts on it today. But if at any point today you have any questions during any of these, let me know, or we can also do question and answers at the end. But with that being said, let's kind of talk about, how we're using the text and formatting in a guidebook so that when it comes time for revisions, it's easy, or edits, it's easy for us to take advantage of things. So how many people, if I can figure out where my finger goes, how many people actually use a lot of the text and table formatting items on the ribbon? Or how many people are still kind of manually doing stuff within Word itself? But we're going to dive into that ribbon right now. So let's kind of jump into this. So I've built out a couple sample documents for today. They're not earth-shattering. They're very simple, but just to kind of get the point across. And again, I am going to just remind you, you're getting a little bit of showcase of version 16, which again will probably, right towards the beginning of May, this will be available for everybody. So if things look slightly different than what you're seeing on the screen, that's what's happening. But when we're talking about this text and table formatting, and really, let's think about this again in terms of editing and revising. The top left-hand portion of this section, of this ribbon, is really about applying styles into the document. So styles are, driving specific items that we want to have happen. So like the first blue line button, this gives us our headline style, right? Like what we see here is this cumulative time. So if I was, that's the first blue line button. The second blue line button gives us our regular body text. This gives us, the next one over is our bullets and numbers. And then the arrows to the right, the arrows pointing left and right, those are to promote and demote our bulleted lists. Underneath this gets into numbered lists with promote and demote. And then the the button with the arrow pointing down will reset numbered lists. So if you've ever seen where you've put in several numbered lists into a Word document, and it's like 1, 2, 3 in the first one, and the next one starts at 4, but you wanted to start with 1. This is, if you click on this when you're in the numbered list, it will allow you to switch that up, to get to renumber them correctly. So if just using this first line of this cumulative time, 0 hours, 0 minutes, if I was to click the second blue line button, which is, if you have with your cursor hovered over it, it says text. So this is our body text. It looks to the style guide that's in your collection, which is customizable, and we'll look at that real briefly today, but it applies that style. If I click the first blue line button, it applies the title style, right? And same with bullets, same with numbers, promote, demote, all of those type of things. And the reason why I bring this up, one is we want to make sure that we're being very efficient in how we build, and so that when it comes time for editing and revising, it's easy for us to do things. So the more we're able to go through and apply these styles in the document, and by default they come in certain locations, so which we'll look at right now. So just as an example, if I go in, and I'm going to unzoom this so we can see it. If I put in a content block, so let's just say I put in this activity block. When this comes in, that first line of any content block that's inserted, the headline by default in LeaderGuide Pro comes in at the title style. Whatever your title style in your style guide is. So what font, what size, what colors, spacing before, spacing after, all of those things. And then underneath this is by default is going to give us our body text. So the program is set up automatically for this to go into place, which makes it very easy when you have a team using multiple people building materials. If they're using the same collection, your output of what it looks like is very much the same. I just want to point this out. We're going to dive into the right side more in just a moment, the right side of that ribbon over here in just a moment. But when we get to the piece about updating styles, this making sure we're using our, the LeaderGuide Pro title style, the LeaderGuide Pro text style, those are going to play a key role in it to make it much easier for us to go through. All right, on the other side of the ribbon, for text and table formatting, we've got several different items. We've got clear formatting, right, which is that first choice. So if I put my cursor here, where it's cumulative time, and I will point out at the bottom of this section that you can see a styles box. That's currently where your cursor is currently located. It shows you what your style is. So if I click clear formatting, it's going to wipe that all away and bring it down to the base style, which in a LeaderGuide Pro is LGP text. In a regular Word document, if you clear formatting, it's going to take you down to the normal style. The next one is about paste special. So if we're bringing in information from another document, right? So you started building out a Word doc. You build out your LeaderGuide Pro document, and now you've copied text from a PDF or a website or another Word document that has its own formatting. Instead of doing a straight paste, which will bring over the formatting from the other document. Right, so let's just pull this up so we can see it. Let's unzoom here. All right, so like if I was to let's say copy this text out of this web page, right? So I Control-C, copy it, and jump back into my document here. If I was to go in and just paste this text in, so if I just do, I'll right click so we can see it. So if I just right click and paste, it's going to bring over the formatting of that whatever, wherever it came from, the website, the PDF, the other document. So let me just undo this. Now, if we use this paste special button, when you paste it in, it is going to bring it in at the formatting of whatever the style is where we're located. So at this moment, I'm at that first line, which would be title style, which we can see here, LGP title. Right? That's LGP title style. So if I was to go in and use that paste special there, it brings in everything at LGP title, or my headline style. Just bring that out. If I use paste special at the lower one, which is my body text style, it brings it in there. So the more we can use these features, you're setting your document up when it comes time for revising later. So we're kind of putting in the groundwork to make this a little bit easier. Tables, if you ever need to do that, we've got this section here. The other ones that I really want to point out for us today are, it's going to be the right two, which is, we're going to look at these as well as these bottom four. The other ones, the paintbrush gives us just a single line. The omega sign gives us basically a enter your answer field. I mean, I can show you what that looks like. Let me just. All right, so if I click the paintbrush, it gives us the single line. If I click on the omega sign, it gives us just a prompting field to enter in a correct answer. The other buttons come up. The first one, which is, it looks like a two content blocks with a paragraph mark in between it. What this does, when I click on this, it allows us to break the table. So if you notice it above where my cursor was located, it broke the table, and I'm now able to get into my document. I'm able to add text into the documents or images that is outside the LeaderGuide Pro table. One thing to keep in mind when you break tables, if you notice over here on the right-hand side, we have lost the ability, we've lost the lesson header that kind of carries over onto each page because it's no longer a continuous table. All right, so if I was to take all of these out and bring that back, notice I still have this line here. Questions so far?
I have one. I wrote it in the chat, but could you remind me again why we might want to break a table?
Yes. So you may want to break the table. Maybe you've got a large image you want to bring in, right? Or you've grabbed a screenshot of, Excel spreadsheet that you need to have in there, or just the material that you have needs, it's too constrained within the tables of LeaderGuide Pro. Those would be some of those examples.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. So one thing, and this actually falls outside of this text and table formatting. If you ever want to break the table, but continue the lesson name over to the other page, so we'll use it here again in this run the activity block. I've got my cursor in the block I want to do it, but in the module and lesson control section, the kind of far right hand side upper, the top icon is the continue button. So with our cursor in the row we want to basically break the table at and bring it over to the next page, when we click on this, it breaks the table, it gives us a page break, and it now carries that lesson name over. So now, if I had other information I wanted to put in here, that was outside of it, or I wanted to insert in a large image, right? I could do that. All right, so just as an example, let's say I went in and inserted a. Normally, ideally, I should have used the LeaderGuide Pro insert tool to insert the picture, so I could have resized it at the same time. Right here. This would allow me to bring it in and set my height and width when it came in. But just for ease. All right, I could have brought my image in and had it on that page or whatever that was. So that's when you're kind of, laying out the document and how you want things to fall. Sometimes you need to do this, and the nice way to make sure we're carrying over this lesson name is by using the continue button. All right, so break table allows us to break the table, which just splits it out. The continue button puts in the page break. It brings everything over to the next page, and now I've got space underneath it.
Quick question: do you break the table first?
So to bring this over, to get it where it comes over automatically, the continue button breaks the table and puts in the page break, so it automatically goes in, right? So I can do it again, just so we can do it. I got my cursor over here in slide 1. I'll click the continue button again. And so what you'll see is, right, it put that page break in. It broke the table, put in a page break, so there's a series of things, and it carries over the lesson name. Where if I just did the break table, which is here, right, I'll put my cursor, I'll put it in this one below it. If I break the table this way, wrong button. It really just splits the table right at that one spot. All right, and now I've lost the headline over here, or the lesson name. All right. So the next item, and I've kind of set up this document so we could look at it. How many times have you guys kind of built out, you've started building out a facilitator guide, and you've got a whole bunch of text that's, filling up a single content block, and maybe you've got a bunch of space over here, on one side. Like, do you guys ever have this kind of happen to you, this kind of general layout? Okay. So I see often, too often. So
What I normally have to do is copy because they'll push it down to the next page even.
Correct.
And then put it on there.
Yep. Yeah, I mean,
I didn't want them all the way down.
So couple items that we could do to fix this, to lay this out. So Teresa says, I add a table row and split the text. That's one option, absolutely. So you could go in and put in a separate, and what Teresa is saying, she's gone in and she's put in a separate, maybe another say this block, and has gone in and copied some of the text. Right, took some of it out and pasted it over there, right? So now you've kind of broken up that way. You could go that route. I'm just going to bring this back. There's 2 buttons that can help you on the ribbon here that could be beneficial for you. And actually, we'll use this as an example to actually do the last one before this. So if I want to get rid of this table row, right, this content block, I just need to put my cursor anywhere in column 2 or column 3. And on the ribbon, if I choose the bottom right-hand portion of the text and table formatting, and I click the the delete table row, that will just take out wherever my cursor is, it deletes out the row. It's the exact same thing. It's the same thing as if you right click, come down to delete cells, delete entire row. It does the same thing. It's just giving you a button on the ribbon. But so outside of adding in, putting in a separate content block and bringing those over, one thing, if you're in a 3-column layout and you're not having anything over in column 3, bottom row, we've got, so it's bottom row, second choice from the right, it's our merge or split button, which reads one of the templates in your facilitator guide or in your collection of how wide column 1 is, how wide column 2 is, how wide column 3 is. And when you click on it, it applies it. I need to actually have my cursor on the right. You want to have your cursor in the right content block, right? So I need to have my cursor over here in the say block, and I'll click on this. And what it does is it merges it from a 2-column to a 3-column, or from a 3-column to a 2-column, or from a 2-column to a 3-column. It's the big thing is it's reading the template of, again, how wide each of the table, each of the columns are, so you don't end up with this kind of stair-stepping that you would normally see in a LeaderGuide, if you, not in a LeaderGuide Pro, but if you just use words, merge, or split. So that's one option. The other option is still in text and table formatting, but it's this first line, and it looks like an S or a snake. And if you hover your cursor over it long enough, it's called flow table. And what this does, put your cursor in what I'd call the offending block, the one that's not, it's kind of going over multiple pages, or it's left a portion, it left a portion blank. But by clicking on this one, flow table, it will then split the information, and fill up the space on the other page. If it's split over because it's a really large image, it obviously doesn't move the image. It doesn't split the image in half, but it will split text, I should say. So you're able to have the whole page filled out that way. Questions on these? And I just see this. I changed table properties, and it keeps the lesson title. I allow the row to break across pages. Yeah. So the flow table, and then so the flow table will do this. And I'm saying room 203 because and I don't know your name. But the other one, to carry the name over, use the continue button, and then you don't have to go in and manually be fiddling around within words features. Those two features should take care of it for you. All right. So that's kind of me. I wanted to kind of set the groundworks of setting up the documents. Making sure we're getting getting in the styles, using some of the features just for getting our layouts and our formatting nice in the document. But with this, let's look at some of the higher end features to help us once we've kind of got some documents built out. So we're going to look at, what if, in the example of we've built out a facilitator guide, which we have here. So I'm going to put this on that side. And I've got a participant guide that was built from this facilitator guide. And actually I should be showing you this so you could actually see it. So left-hand side, let me close that out, left-hand side showing us the participant book. Left-hand side showing us the facilitator guide. Right-hand side's the participant guide. If I go to, I'm just going to scroll up to the table of contents so you guys can kind of see this. All right. So when we do an extract, it brings over, from one document where we pull over the course structure, and then you pick and choose which content blocks go into it. So, and this just as a nice feature within version 16 is this navigation pane, which will show you what all the different content blocks that are in the document. So in this facilitator guide, I've got key points and PowerPoint slides and question and answers and says and times and transitions. But when I brought it over to the participant book, I brought over key points, I brought over PowerPoint slides and question and answers, and then I added in notes captures. So what we're going to look at now is in the controls section, there is a special feature that allows us to sync guidebook blocks. So from one guidebook to another, I do have to point out that one of them has to be built from the other because we're looking for the identical structure. So we're going to use the example of we've built out both of these documents, but we've now gone and made changes. Textual changes in, let's say, in this facilitator guide. So I'm going to take the key points here as my example, and I will go in and let's change this text over. All right, I'm just going to put in some random text so we have it. Key point changed. All right, so as an example, we've made the changes in one type of guidebook. In our example, I did it in the facilitator guide. And if I go to the same lesson in my participant book, right, here's the key point that was in there. So we can see at the moment they don't sync up. Important thing to know, when we make changes in one document, it's not an automatic change. You do have to you have to trigger the event to cause these updates to happen. And how we do that, in one of the guidebooks, and here, I'm going to widen this out so it's easier to see. I'm going to come under Special. I'm going to come down to Sync Guidebook Blocks, which opens up a dialog box for us to work with. Best practice, have both facilitator and participant guides, or the two guidebooks that are being synced together, have them already open. And what we can see is we're choosing what's my source document, which document were the changes made into. So in this case, I made the changes in my facilitator guide, so I can highlight that out of the list and click source. And so it knows it was a facilitator guide. And then I can highlight where I want to send the changes to, in this case, my participant guide, and I can mark destination. And obviously, if I didn't have them open, I could click browse to then go and open them up. But again, best practice, have it open, because if you're like me, you've got things saved at different stages, different names based off of things. So just make sure you have the right one open. But with that, I'm going to click OK. And the dialog box that appears shows us two different things. There's two different types of information we can sync. On the left-hand side, allows us to sync information that's in specific content blocks, right? So in my example, I made an update in my key points. And so if I just wanted to update the key points, I could put a check mark next to this and then go through and click OK. If I made changes in a bunch of different ones, I could select those out of the list, or I could mark select all down here at the bottom. The right-hand side is about syncing page number references from one guidebook to another. You do one side or another at a time. You don't want to do both at the same time. So select blocks individually, or use the select all buttons below. But again, we're doing one or the other at a time. So I'm going to do my key points. I'm going to click OK. You get a message here that's just letting you know we're saving a backup file of the document we're going to be making the edits into, because it's going to be easier to go back to the backup file versus to undo what we're just about to do. But so we just click yes. It runs through and we get a message that the participant workbook block reference update is complete. So I can click OK. It takes us back to the document we started in. So in this case, I have my facilitator guide open. But I can, well, here. We are going to, I'll bring this back to the left. And again, to show you, we were in, I had updated the key points in the what is SMART goal. So if I was to navigate to this, as I come down, now notice those key points have changed in here. Let me make that bigger so my head's not in front of it. But we can see those changes have automatically gone through. So as long as this works with when we use content blocks, right? It's gonna, if we've made change in a type of content block, we can sync it from one document to another. So that's one of the nice reasons of why you want to, you know, once you start working in a guidebook, start using those content blocks. Get things into question, you know, the Q&A, the question and answer block, the activity block, the key points block versus, you know, the say block. You know, specific information goes into specific blocks so that we can extract those over to a document, to a, you know, to a participant book, and then when we make changes, we can sync those back and forth. The other, you know, going back to this real quick, the other item we can sync, we come back, we're going to go to special, we're going to come down, we're going to choose sync guidebook blocks. Now, I'm going to go with the idea, we want our participant books to be, you know, to help as a training supplement, you know, a resource during the training where we're like, hey, turn to page 37 for this activity. So you could manually go through and do all those items yourself, or we can come into the sync items, choose your participant guide as your source, choose your facilitator guide as your destination, click OK. Now working on the right-hand side of the guide of the dialog box, I could pull over page number references. I'm at the moment just going to do the PowerPoint slides because I know there's the most. Normally you wouldn't pull over your PowerPoint slide references from one guidebook to another, but in my example, this is the one I've got the most of. So I'll mark that. I'll click OK. Again, we get prompted just letting you know what the updated, you know, the save file is if you ever want to, you know, basically not have what we just did. It will let you know when it's done. All right, so it took us back to the document we started in, which was our participant book. But if I flip back over to my facilitator guide, right, it's now showing me underneath the visual cue in column 1, you know, of the content block we chose, it pulled over the page number reference. So it's saying on page 3 that this slide 1 content block is there in our participant book. All right, so let's flip back over here to this one. I'm just going to scroll up to right, there's my slide 1 in the participant book, and there it is on page 3, which is right behind my head. But so that syncing feature of page numbers makes it very useful for you to go through and, you know, make changes. You know, we made edits in a document, we want to send it from one guidebook to another, or we want to get, you know, our participant or our facilitator guide be able to reference what's happening in a participant guide so that the facilitator can again say, hey, turn to page 4 for this role play, or go to page 17 for this. And you're able to do it with a few mouse clicks in a moment instead of you spending, hours of time, one, figuring out where it's in one guidebook, and then two, bringing it back into the other guidebook. All right. So let's talk about when it comes time that we've got to make some changes to our fonts or to our upfront material or things like that. This is really the power of the collection and using the buttons. Well, actually, we could just easier to show it this way. Using the left-hand buttons of the text and table formatting section. So when I look here at, I'm going to open up the manage collection portion of, getting into the collections. So if I go up on the ribbon under parts and come down to manage collections, we've got a task pane that opens up. And just as an example, if I was to come in, if I went to modify, selected a collection, and click continue, this is how I get into all the pieces. And we're not going to dive into it, but I just want to point out in here that you've got two different style guides for texts. And the difference between style guide 1 and style guide 2 is how we handle numbered lists. But just as an example, if I select one of these and open it up, I've got a whole system now. Here's my style guide, where I could now go in and start editing, right? If I wanted my body text to be something else, I could go in and change that, or maybe I wanted it to be a different color, just so you can see this, right? I could quickly go through, update my style guide in my collection, which now means anytime I move forward and build out a guidebook with this updated collection, it's going to apply these styles, which is great for new material. Now, I'm not going to save this because I don't want to have red text in my collection. But I have, like a cooking show, set one up for us so we can see it in action. So if we're making changes to the fonts, so, the fonts in our document, if we're making changes to our headers and footers, or we're making changes to our icons, we can use the attach feature, which is in the start section. It looks like a paperclip. If I click on this, this allows me to an existing LeaderGuide Pro document to apply a new collection or an updated collection, which will apply our style guides for headers, footers, and our regular body style guide, as well as update our icons. So in ours, I've created a sample collection, which I can choose custom out of this list, choose sample. Generally, when you're attaching to an existing LeaderGuide Pro document, you would leave your type and your columns alone because you want it to keep everything else the same. And I can click OK. And we're going to get a series of dialog boxes walking us through. Please confirm your request to change the collection to this one. So I'll say yes. And because we're making some significant changes, we're going to prompt you to save it under a new name. So you could still keep your existing one, and now we've got this new updated one. And then here's our prompts. Do you want to update your text formatting styles to match the new collection? So in my case, I do. So I'm going to say yes. It will run through, it goes and applies those. We're going to get prompted in a moment. Do you want to update your icons? Now, how quickly this goes can be determined by several things. When's the last time you restarted your computer? Are you running a Teams or a Zoom meeting while you're trying to do this, right? Do you want to update your icons? So I'll say yes. On this one, I chose a different collection just so you could see this in action. but it'll run through and it'll update all the icons based off the new collection or the collection that we're applying. It's going to ask us, do we want to update our graphics cues page, which if you're updating your icons, you probably generally want to do that. And then there'll be, do you want to update your graphics cues? I'll say yes. And then I didn't do, and this one I didn't change anything on my headers and footers, so I'm going to say no just for time purposes. But if you had updated your header and footer style guide, you could say yes to that as well. But the way this works is LeaderGuide Pro is automatic. It's looking through the document for specific styles, right? And remember, we're seeing styles up here in the styles box under text and table formatting. Right? So it's looking for specific styles. And again, if we just put our cursor into a different item, so I've just put my cursor here into the headline style. Of course, my system hasn't caught up, but if you put your cursor in here, it would show you the current style. So headlines are that LGP title. Your regular text is LGP text. Each icon has its own style. Your lesson names, and so this is how the system goes through and automates stuff out. So if it comes time for editing and revising, and we have manually gone into the document and highlighted text. Right, just highlighted text, gone over to the font section, and the home tab, and chose fonts, this font, this color, this size. That's not going to be updated when we do a systematic update based off your style guide, because you've now done direct formatting. So the more you can use, the more you use the buttons here of the first blue line button of headline style, or the second one of regular body style, or our bullets, or our numbers, then the style guide is gonna drive those changes. Questions on this? All right. So again, that attach feature is about when we've gone in and you need to build out, you've updated your style guides, you've updated your icons. Let's say you've updated your cover page, you've updated your some of the upfront templates about the programming perspective. I'm not going to run through the process just for time purposes, but this is where we do an extract, where we go from a current guidebook to another type of guidebook. And you basically build out a second guidebook with the updated collection, which has your new cover page and all the new templates, because that brings in all of those templates instead of just updating our style guides. So depending on what's changed is whether you use the extract or the attach. But for our purposes today, the attach feature is the one when we're talking about updating fonts, updating colors, those type of things. All right. So now let's talk about working as a team, or how do we collaboratively work through some of these items. So obviously it's going to be dependent on your system, your processes, but let's look at it as you need to send something out to someone who's not using LeaderGuide Pro for them to review it. My first suggestion would be that you do not go in and send them your original document. If you're sending them the whole guidebook to be reviewed, do a file, do a save as, and give them, put their name on it, Pat Review or whatever, whatever naming convention that you need. And then they can come in. It's a Word document. They could come in, they could go through, they could highlight text. They could make changes. They could come under references, a review, add in comments, all of those type of things. Right, and they're doing that in the version that they gave you. And the reason why I say don't share this don't give them the original, is that most people I hate to say it, don't have the best word skills. And so the chances of them blowing out some of the underlying styles or coding that LeaderGuide Pro uses is significantly high. So give them a version. You can then have your version up, their version, and then make the changes back into the document. It's just going to make it easier for maintaining a clean working document in LeaderGuide Pro. So you can send them the whole document. You can also come back in here. Let's say you just want them to review a portion of it, right? Like it's going to a subject matter expert on this one lesson or this one module in its lessons in the document. I mean, obviously you could save it out and delete out all the other pieces, or in the module and lesson control section, you could come under bottom row, the librarian, and you could come out and you could archive out a module or lesson. Which would normally, and I think this is because I've been popping in and out of stuff, but you would normally see all your modules and lessons, and you could save that out, save out the lesson on understanding SMART goal or the module on understanding SMART goals, and just send them that one piece that they then could edit. I'm going to close this out real quick. Let's try this again. There we go. It was because I didn't have that. I hadn't cleared out my comments. But on here, I can now come through and say, I want to archive out understanding SMART goals. And I can put it to my local library or my master library or both. I get prompted to save. The nice part, if you're using our structure, when we do the archive, it would put it into, like in my case, I was in a participant guide, so it puts in my participant modules, 2-column wide, because that was my layout. So I get action completed successfully. And I'll just use this open button real quick. So you can see how I got to that, sorry. I had gone to open participant modules, right? Because I archived the module 2-column wide. And this is what I just archived just a moment ago. But I could send someone just this module and its this one module and all its lessons, and then they could make their changes in it. I can bring it back and then transfer those changes to my document. So the more we can collaboratively do this, the easier it is. Or the more, collaboration always, most part makes it easy. The more we can, simplify the process of collaboration, the easier it is. This same process of, using the librarian feature, let's say you're building out material. Right? Obviously, this isn't necessarily about editing and revising, but one person, if you had multiple people building it in a single guidebook, one person could kind of set the main structure, get the whole guidebook built, but then, Melissa's able to build out the first module, and I can build the second module as lessons, and Nancy's building the third module and lessons, and then those could all be stitched back together using the librarian function, right? Where instead of archiving items, I could insert items into a guidebook. And I could then build out my guidebook that way. So the more you can kind of, understand or have a good explanation of your processes, what you're trying to achieve, we can kind of help you set up the best manner to go about these. So today I really want to kind of talk about some of the higher end items. But when you want to dive into this completely in your system, reach out to me. We can walk you through so it's dialed into exactly what you're trying to use or trying to achieve and which features will best get you there. All right. Last item I kind of want to go into today, and again, this one's just more at the high level. The details of how to do this in version 16 will be, we'll do a session on this in May, early in May. But basically, what happens if we've made changes to our PowerPoint? How do we go about editing and revising documents based off of this? So this one, it really depends on kind of what's happened in your guidebook or in that PowerPoint, right? So I'm going to flip back over. We're going to just use this participant guide as an example. So let's say we've gone through and, our original PowerPoint had 10 slides and now an 11th slide has been made. All right, what you'd end up doing, you would find out in the facilitator guide where that new slide was, right? So let's say it was after this key point. I could now go up into the ribbon, go under instructor-led, add in a slide block where I need it, and then I would just update all fields, which just makes sure my slide numbering gets put in line. All right, so this is slide 3, that's slide 4. Previously, this was slide 3. And then I would just be able to go under special and do a replace, walk through the replace functionality, and bring in either all my slides or just replace out an individual one. Right, so that's, you've got a new slide and you need to add that in. That's how we'd go about it. Let's just say, we still have the same amount of slides, and we've just, slide 1's changed. It's got a new look, branding changes or whatever. Again, this is where we would just do the replace. Right? Go under special, choose replace, and it's basically, we just want to make sure however many slides are in my deck is, we've accounted for all those slides in our facilitator guide. And the replace will go in and change those all out. I'm going to share a link, for those who want to kind of see this in version 15. Let me do this. I pulled it up. It's in the Great Circle Learning, the Watch and Learn, which is under events. Let me just show you this. So if you go under events and choose watch past events, it's this PowerPoint Masterclass Session 3 that you could get to it, or I'll put it into chat right here. There's a link to it on YouTube as well. This one will walk you through the replacing and all that process of using PowerPoints in version 15. So, for updates for PowerPoint, first one, we've got, new slides been added. We add in the slide, do a replace. We have the same amount of slides in version, in example 2. They're just updated. You would just do a replace. Third option is a slide's been removed, right? There's no longer a slide 4. It was a 10 slide deck and now it's a 9 slide deck, right? This is where we would go through. You would just, on this one, you would just put your cursor in the row the slide you want to get rid of and just delete it out. So you would just delete out the slide out of that guidebook. And then, you just make sure all your slide numbering's in line, and remember to make sure your slide matches your how you want your slide sequenced. It's the update all fields, which will go through and set it back from, 1 through however many. So I know we're right at the hour mark. What questions do you have for me? Anything? All right, so Paul, none at this time. I'm glad you found it very helpful. So, as much as we can talk, doing these, it's very much like, hey, here's what it can do, right? I like to think of these as like ivory tower. Like, here's what we can do. Here's some, here's some good tips, some best practices, what we've seen people do over the years. But then there's the, you've got a job and you got to get stuff done, or you've got your processes and all those. Reach out to us. I'm happy to walk you through setting up, really figuring out the best process for what you're trying to achieve to get your job done. We just wanted you to do it in as few steps as possible with as least headache as possible. And the more you can harness the automations that the program's going to give you, the easier that's going to be. But with that, reach out with any questions, and I will, get this out, get this posted, hopefully by tomorrow, and we'll have the new events for May posted by the beginning of next week. But with that, hope everyone has a great day, and we'll see you all soon.